The crystalline ships of the Kithax fleet descended like razor-sharp fragments of a broken mirror, cutting through Earth's atmosphere with a silence that belied their destructive potential. Each vessel was a marvel of biological engineering, grown rather than constructed, with hulls that could self-repair and weapons that could liquefy entire continents. Commander Vernac stood motionless on the bridge of the lead ship, the Worldbreaker. His six-limbed form was a testament to evolution's most brutal design. An exoskeleton of near-impenetrable chitinous armor, eyes that could perceive spectrums humans couldn't even imagine, and neural pathways that processed information faster than any known sentient species. Preliminary scans complete, announced Sub-Commander Krulax, mandibles clicking with a rhythm that betrayed excitement. Planetary defenses are minimal. Primitive energy signatures. Rudimentary communication networks. Vernac's response was a low, contemptuous rumble that translated to pure disdain. Humanity had been under observation for decades, a species that seemed more interested in internal conflicts, environmental destruction, and technological distractions than true galactic potential. The Kithax had conquered civilizations far more advanced, far more organized. This would be nothing more than a routine harvest. The first wave of dropships began their descent, each carrier containing 100 bioengineered warriors. Their exoskeletons could withstand pressures that would instantly crush most sentient beings. Regenerative capabilities meant that even if they lost limbs, they could regrow them within hours. Plasma weapons charge, quantum shields at maximum. They were prepared for any resistance. What they weren't prepared for was humanity. Deep within Norave's underground command center, a team of specialists watched the invasion unfold. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, head of the First Contact Contingency Unit, had been preparing for this moment her entire career. Unlike most of her colleagues, she understood something critical about humanity that the Kithax would never comprehend. "They're coming in standard conquest pattern," she muttered, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Predictable. Always predictable. The first Kithax dropships breached the lower atmosphere, their energy signatures momentarily blinding satellite monitoring systems. Standard invasion protocol. Eliminate communication infrastructure. Neutralize military command centers. Begin resource extraction. But something was different. Instead of panicked communications and fragmented responses, the human systems seemed to be adapting. Satellite networks rerouted. Military command centers went dark, only to reappear in unexpected locations. Communication networks that should have been obliterated began to restructure themselves with impossible speed. "Incoming," whispered a young technician, her hand hovering over a series of complex switches. The first plasma strikes should have vaporized entire city blocks. Instead, they found themselves redirected. Adaptive electromagnetic fields, technologies the Kithax had never encountered, began to absorb and dissipate their most powerful weapons. Commander Vernac felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest: uncertainty. "Report," he demanded, his translation matrix struggling to convey the growing tension. Sub-Commander Krulax's response was uncharacteristically hesitant. "Targeting systems compromised. Energy redirection detected. Our weapons are being studied." It was more than study. The humans were learning, adapting, countering faster than the Kithax computational systems could process. Each weapon strike became data. Each attack, a lesson. In the first hour of invasion, the Kithax lost more ships than in their entire century-long galactic conquest. And humanity was just getting started. Deep beneath the Colorado Rocky Mountains, the Consolidated Human Response Center hummed with an energy that defied the chaos erupting on the surface. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter of humanity's most ambitious defensive strategy, a network that was far more than a mere military command center. Around her, a mosaic of human potential assembled, each expert a unique piece of an impossible puzzle. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like chaos. To Elena, It was a symphony of human adaptability. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, a quantum computing specialist from Tokyo, worked side by side with Maria Rodriguez, an indigenous survival expert from the Andean highlands. Next to them, former Special Forces operative Jack Coleman collaborated with Dr. Aisha Okoye, a Nigerian ecological researcher specializing in extreme environment adaptation. "They don't understand us," Alina muttered, her eyes scanning multiple holographic displays that tracked the alien invasion in real time. Each screen told a different story: satellite imagery, communications networks, military deployments, environmental data. Jack Coleman approached, his weathered face a map of conflicts past. "Our initial projections were wrong," he said, pointing to a complex algorithm scrolling across one of the screens. "The Kethax are adapting faster than we anticipated. Their computational systems are learning." Alina's lips curved into a predatory smile. "So are we." The true genius of the human response was its distributed intelligence. No single system, no single strategy controlled the defense. Instead, it was a living, breathing network where every piece could adapt, learn, and respond faster than any centralized command. Dr. Nakamura's quantum systems were breaking down Kethax communication frequencies in real time. Maria Rodriguez's understanding of indigenous survival techniques, developed over thousands of years of adapting to Earth's most challenging environments, provided insights into unconventional defensive strategies. "Look at this," Dr. Okoye called out, her fingers dancing across a molecular simulation. "Their exoskeleton has a quantum resonance frequency. If we can generate a targeted electromagnetic pulse at this specific harmonic..." Jack Coleman was already ahead of her. Special Forces teams were being deployed with custom-designed electromagnetic generators, each unit a mobile weapon designed to exploit the specific weaknesses they were discovering. The Kethax believed they were fighting the traditional military. They had no concept of the true battlefield, which was everywhere and nowhere at once. Satellite networks became living, adaptive systems. Communication infrastructure transformed into a distributed neural network that could route around damage faster than the aliens could target it. Military units weren't just defending. They were collecting data, learning, evolving with each encounter. "Incoming transmission," a young communications specialist announced. The message was unlike anything the Kethax had ever encountered. A multi-layered communication that was simultaneously a weapon, a defensive strategy, and a piece of adaptive intelligence. Alina watched the alien invaders struggle to comprehend what was happening. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were reimagining the very concept of conflict. "They think we're weak," she said to no one in particular. "They have no idea what's coming." The crucible was heating up, and humanity was just beginning to show its true potential. Colonel Marcus Chen stood before a holographic display that pulsed with living data, his fingers tracing complex algorithms that danced like living neural networks. The Adaptive Response Protocol was more than a weapon system. It was humanity's most audacious technological creation. In the subterranean laboratories beneath Silicon Valley, teams of the world's most brilliant minds had been preparing for this moment for decades. What the Kethax saw as humanity's weakness, its seemingly fractured global society, was actually its greatest strength. The first wave of adaptive nanoswarm weapons began to deploy. Imagine a weapon that wasn't just a tool of destruction, but a living, learning intelligence. Each nanocluster was a miniature computational system, capable of analyzing alien technology in real time, breaking down its defenses, and developing counter-strategies faster than any traditional weapon could function. Dr. Yara Santos, a Brazilian nanoengineering genius, watched with intense concentration as the first swarms deployed. "They're not just attacking," she explained to her team. "They're learning. Every interaction with Kethax technology is a data point, a lesson." The nanoswarms moved like liquid mercury, shifting and adapting. Where traditional weapons would punch through or explode, these technological marvels infiltrated. They didn't just destroy Kethax systems. They understood them, decoded them, and turned them against their creators. On the bridge of the Worldbreaker, Commander Vernac watched in horror as his most advanced shield systems began to fail. The human weapons were doing something impossible. They were evolving with each millisecond of contact. Electromagnetic pulses developed by Dr. Chen's team weren't simple energy bursts. They were intelligent disruptors that could identify and target specific quantum frequencies unique to KTHAC's technology. Each pulse was a surgical strike, dismantling alien systems with surgical precision. "We're not just fighting," Colonel Chen muttered. "We're conducting a technological symphony." Biological countermeasures developed from Earth's most extreme ecosystems began to take effect. Inspired by extremophile organisms that survived in volcanic vents, Arctic ice, and radioactive zones, these adaptive biological agents attacked the KTHACs at a cellular level. The aliens had conquered hundreds of civilizations with technologies that seemed like magic to less advanced species. They had weapons that could shatter planets, shields that could deflect entire energy barrages, but they had never encountered an enemy that could adapt faster than they could attack. Dr. Santo's nanoswarms began to communicate with each other, creating a distributed intelligence network that made their individual components look primitive by comparison. They shared data instantaneously, learned from each other's encounters, developed strategies in microseconds. "It's not about the individual weapon," Dr. Santos explained to a stunned group of military leaders. "It's about the network. We're not just fighting with technology. We're fighting with a living, thinking ecosystem." Commander Vernac's tactical systems began to fail. For the first time in centuries of galactic conquest, the KTHACs found themselves facing an enemy that didn't just resist, it transformed. The technological symphony was just beginning its first movement, and humanity was conducting. In a nondescript communications center located in the heart of a repurposed research facility, a team of specialists began their most delicate operation. This was not a conventional military unit, but a carefully assembled group of linguists, anthropologists, psychologists, and communication experts who understood something profound about conflict. War was not just about weapons. It was about breaking the enemy's will to fight. Dr. Samira Patel, lead strategist of the Psychological Warfare Division, studied the intricate holographic displays that mapped the KTHAC's communication networks. Every alien transmission was a window into their society, a society built on rigid hierarchical structures and an absolute belief in their own superiority. "They're predictable," she muttered, tracing complex communication patterns. "Completely and utterly predictable." The first targeted transmission went out, a carefully crafted message that would do more damage than any physical weapon could hope to achieve. It wasn't just a communication. It was a precision-guided psychological missile. The message was multi-layered, designed to exploit every known weakness in KTHAC's social structure. It contained fragments of their own historical conquests, recontextualized to highlight moments of vulnerability. Tactical errors from previous invasions were brought to light, each revelation carefully constructed to create doubt among the alien leadership. Commander Vernac's communication officers began to report strange anomalies. Troop morale indicators were fluctuating in ways their systems couldn't comprehend. Lower-ranking KTHAC's warriors began to question established protocols, a previously unthinkable occurrence in their strictly hierarchical society. Jack Coleman, the former Special Forces operative now working with the Psychological Warfare team, understood the true power of information. "It's not about what you say," he explained to a group of young analysts. "It's about creating uncertainty, making the enemy question everything they know about themselves." Each transmission was a carefully constructed narrative that played on the KTHACs' deepest cultural fears. They had conquered hundreds of civilizations by presenting themselves as an unstoppable force. Now, humanity was systematically dismantling that mythology. Dr. Patel's team developed what they called fracture points, specific communication strategies designed to create internal conflict within the KTHAC's command structure. They understood that the aliens' greatest strength, their rigid, hierarchical society, was also their greatest weakness. Intercepted communications revealed something the Kithaks had never experienced: hope. Unlike the aliens' view of the universe as a constant battle for survival, humans saw it as a challenge to be overcome together. The psychological warfare went beyond simple propaganda. It was a sophisticated attack on the very foundations of Kithak's cultural identity. Each message was a carefully crafted piece of a larger puzzle designed to create cascading doubt and uncertainty. "We're not just fighting their technology," Dr. Paddle explained to her team. "We're fighting their perception of reality." Commander Vernac began to experience something he had never felt in centuries of conquest: doubt. The human communications were doing something impossible. They were making the Kithaks question their own inevitability. The real battle was happening in the space between thoughts, in the fragile realm of belief and perception. And humanity was winning. New Shanghai burned with an intensity that defied conventional understanding of warfare. The city had transformed from an urban landscape into a living, breathing defensive system that the Kithaks could never have anticipated. Admiral Sarah Kaminsky stood in the primary command center, her eyes reflecting holographic displays that showed the battle from perspectives no traditional military commander had ever possessed. This wasn't just a battle. It was a symphony of human adaptation, with every system, every piece of infrastructure becoming a weapon. The Kithaks believed they were launching their final devastating assault. Massive bioengineered war machines descended from the sky, each capable of turning entire city blocks to ash in moments. Their previous conquests had taught them that resistance was futile, that planetary defenses would crumble under their technological might. They were wrong. Volcanic systems beneath the city began to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. Electromagnetic networks that should have been obliterated instead absorbed and redirected massive energy signatures. The very ground seemed to be fighting back. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's earlier preparations became horrifyingly apparent. Every ecosystem, every technological system was interconnected. A living, breathing defense mechanism that had been training for this moment since the first microorganism emerged from primordial seas. The first wave of Kithaks dropships encountered something impossible. Adaptive camouflage systems developed by a team of researchers from 6 different continents made entire city blocks disappear and reappear in different locations. Quantum-entangled communication networks were routed faster than the aliens could track. "Targeting systems compromised," reported a Kithaks tactical officer, mandibles clicking with growing uncertainty. "Urban infrastructure responding." What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity's greatest weapon was its ability to turn adversity into opportunity. Each Kithaks weapon strike became data, each attack a lesson. Underground networks, originally designed for communication and infrastructure, became adaptive defensive systems. Subway tunnels transformed into mobile launch platforms. Electrical grids became weapons of precise electromagnetic disruption. Commander Vernac watched in growing horror as his supposedly invincible war machines began to fail. The humans were doing something fundamentally impossible. They were fighting with an intelligence that transcended traditional warfare. A team of ecological researchers had integrated their understanding of complex ecosystem interactions with military defensive strategies. The result was a city that could literally fight back, where every building, every street, every piece of infrastructure was a potential weapon. Nanotechnological swarms developed by Dr. Yora Santos began to interact with the city's infrastructure. They weren't just defending. They were learning, adapting, turning the entire urban landscape into a single, massive computational system. "They're treating the entire planet as a single, adaptive organism," muttered Jack Coleman, watching the battle unfold. "Not as separate systems, but as one living network." The Kithaks discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not its technology, but its ability to transform adversity into opportunity. Each moment of the battle became a lesson, each attack a chance to understand and counter. In the first hours of the Battle of New Shanghai, the Kithaks lost more ships than in their entire century-long galactic conquest. and humanity was just getting started. In the depths of a secure research facility that no longer appeared on any official map, Dr. Aisha Okoye made a discovery that would redefine humanity's understanding of itself, and the Kethax's worst nightmare. The tissue sample from the first captured Kethax warrior lay spread across multiple holographic displays, each layer revealing increasingly impossible insights. What had begun as a routine xenobiological analysis had transformed into something far more profound. "It's not just adaptation," she whispered to Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, her fingers tracing complex molecular structures. "It's a complete reimagining of biological potential." Humanity's immune systems were nothing like any biological defense mechanism the galaxy had ever seen. Where most species developed static defensive structures, human biology was a living, learning network. Each exposure became a lesson, each challenge an opportunity for fundamental transformation. The Kethax had conquered hundreds of civilizations by exploiting biological vulnerabilities. They had weapons that could break down cellular structures, disrupt neural networks, and neutralize most known life forms within moments. But they had never encountered a species like humans. Dr. Okoye's research revealed that human DNA was less a fixed blueprint and more of a dynamic, responsive system. The very concept of genetic stability that defined most known species was, for humans, just a starting point. Their cellular structures could learn, adapt, and fundamentally restructure themselves in response to environmental challenges. "Look at this," she said, bringing up a complex molecular simulation. "Normal cellular mutation takes generations. For humans, it's happening in real time." The captured Kethax warriors were experiencing something they had never encountered. Their advanced medical systems, designed to neutralize and study captured species, were failing. Human biology wasn't just resisting, it was actively learning from the attempted neutralization. Colonel Marcus Chen connected the biological revelations with the technological strategies they had been developing. "It's not about fighting," he explained to the research team. "It's about constant evolution." Neural networks, both biological and technological, were proving to be something entirely new. The human brain didn't just process information, it transformed it. Each encounter with the Kethax became a lesson, each challenge an opportunity for fundamental restructuring. Dr. Nakamura's quantum computing systems had been studying human cognitive responses. What they discovered defied every known principle of information processing. Human brains were creating new neural pathways faster than any artificial system could track. Stress, conflict, challenge. These weren't obstacles. They were fuel for transformation. The Kethax had a fatal misconception about biological potential. They saw life as a fixed system to be conquered or controlled. Humanity saw it as a continuous process of becoming. Commander Vernac received the initial research reports and found himself experiencing something unprecedented. Fear. The human species wasn't just defending itself. It was fundamentally changing the very rules of biological engagement. "We are not what they think we are," Dr. Okoye said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and something deeper, a profound understanding of human potential. Humanity wasn't just a species. It was a living, breathing evolutionary algorithm, constantly learning, constantly changing, never accepting the limitations others tried to impose. The news spread faster than light itself through the intricate communication networks that connected countless civilizations. It wasn't just information. It was a seismic shift in the galactic understanding of potential. The conclave of sentient species convened an emergency session, something that had happened only 3 times in the last 10,000 years. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations gathered, their holographic forms flickering in a massive chamber that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, not as a conqueror, but as something far more dangerous, a representative of possibility. The Vexinar delegation, a silicon-based species that had watched countless civilizations rise and fall, was the first to break the stunned silence. Their crystalline communication nodes pulsed with a mixture of fear and unprecedented respect. You defeated the Kithaks, their lead representative stated. It wasn't a question. Alina's response was carefully measured. We didn't defeat them. We showed them a different way of existing. The gathered species struggled to comprehend what had truly happened. The Kithaks had been the galactic standard of conquest for centuries. They were the measuring stick against which all military might was compared. And now, a species that most had considered primitive had not just resisted, they had fundamentally transformed the nature of conflict. Representative Tickle of the quantum consensus, a collective intelligence that had existed for millennia, analyzed the transmission records. Your strategy defies all known principles of warfare, they observed. You did not seek to destroy, you sought to understand. Intelligence reports began to circulate. How a species that had been barely noticed just decades ago had developed technologies that rewrote the fundamental understanding of biological and technological potential. How they had turned an invasion into a moment of collective growth. The Preservation Collective, a network of species dedicated to understanding evolutionary potential, was particularly fascinated. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's research on human adaptive capabilities was being studied across multiple scientific networks simultaneously. They are not a species, one preservation analyst noted. They are a living algorithm of adaptation. Ambassador Rodriguez understood the true significance of the moment. This wasn't about human victory. It was about demonstrating a different approach to existence, one based on adaptation, learning, and collective potential rather than conquest. The Kithaks were not destroyed. They were fundamentally changed. Species that had lived in terror of the Kithaks for millennia began to see a different possibility. Diplomatic channels that had been closed for generations began to open. The seemingly fractured human civilization was revealed to be something far more profound, a distributed network of potential, where every challenge was an opportunity for transformation. We're not here to replace the Kithaks, Alina explained to the stunned representatives. We're here to show that there are other ways to exist. The Conclave records would later note this as a pivotal moment in galactic history. The day a species was recognized not for its ability to conquer, but for its capacity to understand, adapt, and grow. Humanity had not just survived an invasion. They had rewritten the rules of existence. The aftermath was not a celebration of victory, but a profound moment of transformation. Commander Vernac stood before the human delegation, his once imposing form now appearing almost vulnerable. The Kithaks' leadership had been fundamentally dismantled, not through destruction, but through a complete restructuring of their understanding of existence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez understood that this was about more than a single conflict. It was about reimagining the very nature of civilization. We're offering you a choice, she explained, her voice calm and measured. Not subjugation, not revenge, but an opportunity to grow. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had defeated the most powerful conquering force in the galaxy not by matching their violence, but by revealing a completely different approach to existence. Every technological breakthrough, every adaptive strategy was an invitation, not a weapon. In the underground research facilities that had become humanity's true battlefield, scientists like Dr. Aisha Okoi and Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura were already working on collaborative research projects. The Kithaks' most advanced technologies were being studied not as spoils of war, but as opportunities for mutual understanding. Jack Coleman, the former Special Forces operative who had become a key diplomatic strategist, understood the deeper significance. We're not proving we're stronger, he told the assembled team. We're showing that strength isn't about conquest. It's about potential. The galactic community watched in unprecedented silence. Humanity was doing something no species had ever done before, turning a moment of potential annihilation into an opportunity for collective growth. The Kithaks' leadership was given a choice that no conquered species had ever received. They could integrate, learn, and grow, or they could choose isolation. There would be no punishment, no retribution, just an open invitation to understand a different way of existing. The universe is not a battlefield to be conquered, Dr. Rodriguez explained to the stunned Kithax representatives. It's a challenge to be understood. Technological exchanges began almost immediately. The adaptive systems that had been humanity's greatest weapon became tools of collaboration. Quantum communication networks that had been defensive mechanisms transformed into bridges of understanding. Representative Tickle of the Quantum Consensus observed the unfolding events with what could only be described as scientific excitement. Humanity was demonstrating something far more powerful than military might. They were showing a model of existence based on continuous learning and adaptation. The Kithax discovered that defeat was not an end, but a beginning. Their rigid hierarchical society began to transform, influenced by humanity's distributed, adaptive approach to problem-solving. We are not what we were, Commander Vernac eventually admitted, his translator conveying a complexity of emotion previously unknown to his species. And that is not a defeat, it is an opportunity. As the first collaborative research stations were established, as the first joint missions were planned, something profound became clear. This was not about one species defeating another. It was about demonstrating a fundamental truth about existence itself. The day humanity shook the strongest Deathworld species became more than a military victory. It was a reimagining of what it meant to be a civilization in the cosmos, a moment when potential became more important than power.